how did I get involved in this? So I guess I got involved because of my older brother. He probably spoke at one of the sessions, I'm sure, or will speak. Rabbi Simon Jacobson, my older brother, the B'chayr in our family, who was one of the group of the Chayzim and one of the Manichim who started in the late 70s in the Tafshin Lameds. And I guess that's how I got drawn into the Avodas HaKodesh. Now, there's a little interesting tidbit. The way it actually started, it's a cute thing. The ends of the sikhs were very hard to remember. Why? Because the Rebbe, the sikhs themselves had a theme that the Rebbe would develop. A Rashi, a Rambam, a Zohar, a Siyum Masechta, a Sugya, a Parshas HaShavua, a Maimer, something about the Shabbos, about the Parsha. It had its structure, its theme, questions, the answers. Sometimes the Rebbe would speak a contemporary Indian, sometimes about Eretz Yisrael, sometimes about the Avodah of Hafatzas Hayadus, or thank you, spreading Yiddishkeit. Thank you very much. But at the end of the Sikha, especially in the later years, the Lameds and the Mems, the Rebbe would say a lot of brachas, usually about Mashiach, but it can go for a few minutes. And the Rebbe would go from bracha to bracha. The Rebbe would quote a pasuk from Yeshaya and a pasuk from Yirmiyah, a pasuk from Amos, a pasuk from Tzvanya, a Lashon HaGemara, a Lashon HaZohar, a Lashon HaMedrash. And the brachas were very hard to remember. That's why you'll see sometimes in Sikhs, at the end of the Sikha, it'll say Chaser Hasiyum. The end is missing because the Sikha was so long and so deep. By the time the Rebbe came to the brachas, it was hard to remember. I was a very young boy. I used to stand, the Rebbe would sit, and in front of the Rebbe there was a shvil. There was a path, which the Rebbe wanted. It should be open, so people should be able to go out, because in the earlier years, when people had to go out for their physical needs, they would have to go on the tables, and the Rebbe felt it was disrespectful to them, and the antithesis of Kavod HaBriyah, so the Rebbe wanted there should be a shvil. At the end, that shvil just filled up with milk boxes because the Bochurim didn't have where to be. So that became such a tight place, such a pushy place, but it was supposed to be. And for many years, it was a shvil. It was pretty open, especially the weekday Fabrengo, so people could walk in and out. I mean, not so many people used it, but people used it. So I stood at the end of the shvil. My brother stood there. I see the Birshal Raskin is here on the video. So he stood on my right when he came from Morocco, and he made a hanocha. Gemacht an Akira from Morocco and a Hanocha in New York, and he became Munach. And some other younger light and Bochurim who stood there. And I happened to stand there, my brother, and he asked me, he said, could you remember, I was a little kid, I was very young, could you remember the ends of the sikhs, the brachas, the ends? Could you remember? So fine, why not? So I concentrated, especially at the ends. And I would chaza them, and he said, and I guess they felt that I did a pretty good job. So when I got a little older, I was drawn in to the Avodas HaKodesh of Chazara, and then helping with writing, transcribing the Sikhs of Shabbos and of Yom Tov and of the weekdays as well. Another interesting personal experience I'll share with you is I had the schus that every Motzei Shabbos, right after Havdalah, I used to go into the office of WLCC. You know where the office is? I'm sure you guys got a tour of it. If you go to 770 upstairs, you go down the hallway, the end of the hallway, the last door on the left was right near the office of Rabbi Chadakov, Zechrona Levracha, Chaim Mordechai Isaac Chadakov, the Rebbe's secretary. On the left side is the offices of WLCC, where all the hookups would take place and rebroadcast to the world over. So Motzei Shabbos, right after Ma'ariv and Havdalah, I would go in there and I would sit down with headsets, with a mic, and my friend Reb Yonason Hackner, Johnny Hackner, Hamachuna Johnny Hackner, would tell me to begin. And I had the privilege of chazaring verbally the whole Fabrengen of Shabbos or of Yom Tov. I was very young when it started, and the way it started was as follows. It was Yud Shevat, Tov Shin Nun. Yud Shvat was, I think, on a Shabbos. Shabbos Parshas Boy, Yud Shvat Tav Shenun, 1990, Yud Shvat. Of course, this was the 40th anniversary of the Istalkus Hilul of the Rebbe Rayatz and of the Rebbe's Rabbeist for the Rebbe's Nesias. So a huge oilam came in. It was Arbaim Shana. Lo nosen Hashem lechem leiv ladas, say nayim liris as nayim l'shmoya ad hayayim hazeh. Gemara says in Avodah Zarah ad Arbaim shnin lo koi inish adaita de Rabbe. Avodah Zarah daf heyam et beis. It was a big Osiris. Farbrengen was packed. It was Shabbos packed. Wasn't easy to hear. The Rebbe spoke low in those years, lower. I think it was the second sikh of the Farbrengen. The Rebbe asked that since it's Arbaim Shana, it's 40 years since the Hilula of the Rebbe Rayatz, a new tkufa. So tkufa of Koyim Inish Adaita de Rabbe. And the Rebbe asked that every chassid should build a new moisid dedicated to Harvatzas HaTorah, Harvatzas HaMitzvahs, Harvatzas HaYadus, Harvatzas HaMayonis. Every chassid should build a moisid dedicated to Torah, Avodah, Gemilas Chsadim, in his or her city or community, but everyone without exception should build a moisid. This was one of the suggestions, instructions, requests of the Rebbe by that Farbrengen in honor of 40 years. Everybody should get involved and build a new moisid or become part of building a moisid, an institution for Torah, for Yiddishkeit, for spreading Yiddishkeit, for spreading goodness, v'chuli. I still remember it was Mitzvah Shabbos. I was a yeshiva bocher. I was in Shia learning in Beis Medrash. I think it was Shia Beis of Ahol Torah. My Rosh Hashiva that year was Rabbi Yaakov Moshe Wahlberg Shlita, who was later in Manchester, and I think in Eretz Yisrael, later in Manchester and then Eretz Yisrael, Kfar Chabad. And I was a pretty young boy at the time. How old was I? I was in the area of 16 or 17. The Rebbe finished Ma'ariv, Matzoi Shabbos, and I don't know, a half an hour later, maybe 20 minutes later, I'm in the hallway where the Rebbe would give dollars. It was pretty empty. And I meet one of the Gaboyim of 770, who happened to be a neighbor of mine, my parents' home on Montgomery Street. His name is Reb Menachem Gerlitzky. Menachem Gerlitzky was in charge of the Siyumei HaRambam. Every halacha they finished, the Rebbe, they would make a Siyum HaRambam. Reb Menachem Gerlitzky was in charge of that, the head of Koil Teferes Kenim Levi Yitzchak. He sees me, and he says, Reb Yosef Yitzchak, you made a new moisid? I said, Menachem, what's that? I'm not a moisid builder. He said, Du bist doch gewesen beim Farbrengen heint. You at the Farbrengen today. The Rebbe asked that every person should build a new moisid. What's your moisid? I said, the Rebbe wasn't talking about Yeshiva Bochurim. Yeshiva Bochurim, their job is Teirasam Nosam. Anu ein lanu ela Torah. Rabbi Yeshiva Bochurim is to sitzen and learn by Tag und by Nacht. Well, the Rebbe wasn't no Yeshiva. He was talking to people who are involved in Askanis, or even in business. They should get involved in a moisid. What it was a 16 or 17-year-old bocher that start building moises? What's next? Menachem said, Das is pshetlach. You at the Farbrengen. You're now going to say you're not shaykh to what the Rebbe said? I was buying a moisid in Torah. I said, what do you want me to do? Go build a yeshiva somewhere? Would you want I should quit learning and go build a yeshiva? He says, no. I want you to start giving Chazara, Mitzvah Shabbos, every Mitzvah Shabbos, to everybody around the world who can tune in to, then it was telephone lines, tune into WLCC telephone line. They can hear right after Shabbos a review of the entire Farbrengen of the Rebbe, whether it's Mitzvah Shabbos or it's Mitzvah Yom Tov. I said, Menachem, this is the job that Rebbe Yoel used to do for many years. I think Rebbe Yoel would do it Sunday afternoon. And I don't think it's appropriate that I, at such a young age, should do this, should be the official Chazara giver of the Farbrengens to everybody around the world, whoever tunes in. He nudged me. He drove me crazy. He said, listen, all the excuses, if you're not going to do it, nobody's going to do it. It's not done. This is a moisid. It's going to be your it's going to be your moisid that I'm helping you to build it. And he was so insistent. He schlepped me to the door of Yonis and Hackner, Chaim Baruch Halberstam, who was the founder of WLCC, and Yonis and Hackner, who was the operator. He knocked on the door, I remember Hackner opens the door, Baruch, both of them, and he says, Anaya Moisid. We have a new Moisid. YY Jacobson is going to start giving Chazara every Mitzvah Shabbos. Before I knew it, I was in a chair with big headphones on both of my ears, on top of my head, and Hackner, all the lights going on with a big announcement, and him going like this, 1, 2, 3, go, you're live, and Chazara began. And so it continued. There were many communities where Anash in those communities would stay in shul after Ma'ariv. They wouldn't go home to be able to hear the whole Farbrengen, for example, in Montreal, in Miami. And then it would play throughout the week so people could hear it. The next day, Sunday, Monday, the Chazara would play throughout the week. And this was obviously discontinued. This was Tavshin Nun, so it continued for Tavshin Nun Aleph, Tavshin Nun Beis, until the last Farbrengen, which was Vayakel, as I said, Vayakel Tavshin Nun Beis. This was another component, which was also a very great privilege, a very great schos. And then right after that, Rabbi Yoel would usually give Chazara downstairs in 770. I already had an earlier Chazara, Shabbos afternoon, right after the Farbrengen, so I should be able to do the Chazara right after Shabbos. And then would start the big avodah of transcribing it on paper, or typing it on computer, I should say, which was very, very challenging. It was very difficult. It was very powerful. It was a great privilege, but I say it was very, very difficult. At least I could speak for myself. It was difficult for many reasons. Most of them, I think, are obvious. And I should tell you, I don't know, it's Farbrengen personally, so I'll share this with you. For many, many years, I'm not going to say Ad Hayom Hazeh, but close to Ad Hayom Hazeh, when Mitzvah Shabbos came, I got anxious. The reason is because those years, Mitzvah Shabbos, it was such a stressful work. It was so stressful. And I knew the second Shabbos is over. That's it. Bo Shabbos, bo Menucha, and after Shabbos, there's no Menucha. Because Mitzvah Shabbos, I was usually up all night writing, and very often Sunday, and sometimes Sunday night, and sometimes even later. So it was a very, very avodah gdoila. Tremendous, tremendous privilege, tremendous, tremendous chus, obviously, extraordinarily rewarding and powerful, but very challenging. It took a lot of yegiyah, a lot of discipline, a lot of diligence, a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of koiches hanefesh, and the most important thing, a lot of concentration, a lot of bittul, and a lot of learning.